Everybody that's joined us, welcome to Off the Hustle. This is Jared.
Hey, this is Amari.
And we are joined by, man, let me find the right words.
We can say producer,
creator.
I like that.
Visionary.
Visionary. Ooh.
Oh, that's even better.
Brand ambassador.
Brand ambassador. Yeah.
I'm gonna leave here with a real big ego.
I'm thinking corporate mastermind. I would say he's a mastermind.
Yeah, definitely a mastermind.
We're joined by the one and only BJ Orr of Be Creative Media. I'm gonna actually let him just dive a little bit more into himself because I'm just throwing more words.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I consider myself to be a content developer, and the funny thing is, 6 years ago, when I was initially branching out into doing, my independent thing, I chose to, network with this SBA certified business. What's that name? SBA Certified Business Association. Yeah. This mentor, because me, when I came up in the industry, honestly, one of the things that probably prevented me from excelling as quick as I probably could in Atlanta was because I didn't really have access to mentors. When I was coming up in the industry, Atlanta didn't really have a film industry. You know what I'm saying? Like, Atlanta was popping music-wise. It was popping in different areas, but the film and the video industry was just not where it is today.
Yeah.
Or whatever. So
yeah.
I tapped into the SBA program, linked up with this mentor, and it was an older dude. He was like 65 years old or whatever. And he asked me what I did, and I said I do video production. And he said, "Oh, so you develop content?" I said, "That sounds cool." I said, "Yeah, I develop content, but you gotta understand, like, back then, even though content was a thing, it was more so a thing that labeled people who worked on websites and added content to websites from a standpoint of memes or articles or even video. They hadn't yet started labeling people who produce videos as quote unquote content producers or whatever the case is. So
yeah,
I kind of felt like that was dope. I went on LinkedIn, I started searching for titles, and I couldn't find them. They didn't populate for people like me, they populated for people who did websites. And I said, I feel like that's something I can claim. I'm a content developer. And of course, with the rise of the influencer over the last few years, that term has become synonymous with people who produce video content. So, long story short, I'm a content developer. I partner with nonprofits, Fortune 500s, agencies, to pretty much provide turnkey production services, script to screen. We budget, produce, shoot, edit, and deliver content. I kind of started out, of course, working on more so smaller end projects from an independent contractor standpoint. But now, even though they still independently contract me, now we work with everybody from 25 to 30 member crews and six-figure budgets.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And I think about everything that you just mentioned. I can see a movie playing out, and I like how you gave your quick elevator pitch on summarizing who you
elevator pitch.
I'm saying it definitely went over like a little bit of time frame, but just hearing that quick thing about you, there's a story in there, and like we talked about, when we first had a conversation earlier this week. Yeah. Just really having that first conversation with you, learning about who you really were personally. Yeah. It was like, man, it comes to show about there's a story in everyone's careers. Well, if you of course you've gone through some ups and downs, you had to take some lefts and right turns and to get to where you are today. Yeah. What is that starting point for you? What made you get into the media space from the very beginning?
From the very beginning,
what does that story start for you?
Yeah, I would say honestly, man, I just kind of, I came from South Carolina, and I've been in Atlanta for a very long time. I ain't gonna totally give out my age or whatever the case is. But I just kind of, again, media production was not a thing when I was coming up. You gotta understand that. Like, you were either a film producer, a major film producer, or you were a PA. You know what I'm saying? Like, corporation didn't really adapt media departments.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
So it's kind of like the assumption was like the media space was more like for bigger corporations or big time films, things like that.
Yeah, and the biggest thing for me is this. Like, the most challenging thing for me has been existing in this space commanded by polished white men. As somebody who, you know, comes from a challenged environment, trying to adapt. You know, I spent a lot of my early years, literally sitting back, studying and watching how people dress, what the lingo was, how they talk. You gotta understand, like, when I was coming up, when I worked at Coca-Cola years ago, you know, you couldn't have braids, you couldn't have dreads, you couldn't do none of that stuff. And I know a lot of that stuff still applies today. But back then it was even stricter, or whatever the case is.
Oh yeah, I believe it too.
And so I took it upon myself to kind of, you know, break that stereotype. And, you know, at one point, you know, I started growing my hair out. And I don't know, I just wanted people to accept me for who I was. And I think it's very important in 2021, especially with the advent of the social justice movement in 2020. I think it's very important, especially for younger people coming up in the industry, to own themselves and to own who they are. And when you walk up in these rooms with, you know, 10, you know, Southern, you know, white dudes in these executive positions, I think we have to realize, like, they're not bringing us in those rooms because they want us to be white and polished. They're bringing us in those rooms in 2021 because they want us to bring our authentic selves to the table. They want our creative contributions. They want our intellectual property. And, you know, so I think, again, it's very important for younger people coming up in the industry just to accept who they are and just to ensure that they bring that to the table and make sure it's professional. And make sure, you know, if you walk in that room and you confidently tell those people, this is what we need to do, that you do that and you deliver it on time, on brand, on spec. And that's been one of the main things that I've probably focused on, and one of the things that has allowed me to go from an independent contractor editing this to, you know, someone who can manage a budget, you know, 6, 7 figures. So.
Let me ask this. It's something you touched on that's been an area of interest to a lot of young black men. And you come from a unique position of being an independent contractor that gets to walk among the corporate landscape where you're in it, but at the same time, you can still separate yourself from it. But for those who are stuck in that corporate landscape, you touched on hair. I want to talk about hair in particular for a second.
Yeah.
How important is it for a young black man today to have a haircut as opposed to growing out his natural hair? And I know a lot of times women talk on it, but it's not really mentioned on how sometimes you don't want to, you know, waves may not be your thing. Maybe you got a big head and you need a little bit extra hair to even you out. But how do you navigate that?
You mean, is it accepted and depending on what industry you're in?
Yeah, and accepted overall, but should it be something you worry about, yes or no?
That's a very good question. I would like to say no. But again, you have a lot of, I want to watch my words. You have a lot of older people that are in positions of power and influence that have not yet adapted or accepted certain cultures. They have high value customers that they service. Mm-hmm. Those high value customers in most instances don't look like you or me. So they want those customers or clients to be able to relate to whoever it is that they have hired or have in position. So they want you to be clean. They want you to be clean cut. They want you to be presentable. And that's just the way the game is in most instances, unless you're dealing with younger leadership or people that are more open to cultures. or have been exposed to them via social media. But most people grew up in a bubble. You know what I'm saying? Like, and they from the 60s, 50s, and they don't care. You know, when they look at your hair, or whatever the case is, I don't have any, of course. But when they look at your hair, they think, 6 o'clock news. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They think people that look like you, that's what they do, mm-hmm. or whatever the case is. So they immediately associate that with that. But we gotta understand, this isn't anything new. Like, I think the Romans, don't quote me, but I think the Romans back in the day set up a class system. And that class system dictated that, the only way you would be accepted as being someone that was intelligent, or someone that could be accepted into their culture, is if you mimicked their culture. Meaning if you spoke like them, dressed like them, talk like them.
Yeah, like that's kind of goes to the saying of "do as the Romans do," in some ways. So to pretty much your point, it's be aware.
Yeah,
you have to be very aware. Even in this day and age, you have to still be aware of who you are.
Yeah.
In order for you to give off the energy or the look for the outside world to see, you have to understand who you are as a person, your image, in all those different characteristics. So when you go out to the world, you know how to market yourself. You know how to pitch yourself. You know how to put yourself in the room no matter who's around you. So like even if we're talking about someone who is more straight-laced, clean look, you know how to be able to kind of have that engagement with them, because you have to be able to understand, like, be who you are.
Atlanta for a very long time. I ain't gonna totally give out my age or whatever the case is. But I just kind of, again, media production was not a thing when I was coming up. You gotta understand that. Like, you were either a film producer, a major film producer, or you were a PA. You know what I'm saying? Like, corporation didn't really adapt media departments. You know what I'm saying?
So it's kind of like the assumption was like the media space was more like for bigger corporations or big time films, things like that.
Yeah, and the biggest thing for me is this. Like, the most challenging thing for me has been existing in this space commanded by polished white men. As somebody who, comes from a challenged environment, trying to adapt. I spent a lot of my early years, literally sitting back, studying and watching how people dress, what the lingo was, how they talk. You gotta understand, like, when I was coming up, when I worked at Coca-Cola years ago, you couldn't have braids, you couldn't have dreads, you couldn't do none of that stuff. And I know a lot of that stuff still applies today. But back then it was even stricter, or whatever the case is.
Oh yeah, I believe it too.
And so I took it upon myself to kind of, break that stereotype. And, I would, at one point, I started growing my hair out. And I just wanted people to accept me for who I was. And I think it's very important in 2021, especially with the advent of the social justice movement in 2020. I think it's very important, especially for younger people coming up in the industry, to own themselves and to own who they are. And when you walk up in these rooms with, 10, Southern, white dudes in these executive positions, I think we have to realize, like, they're not bringing us in those rooms because they want us to be white and polished. They're bringing us in those rooms in 2021 because they want us to bring our authentic selves to the table. They want our creative contributions. They want our intellectual property. And, so I think, again, it's very important for younger people coming up in the industry just to accept who they are and just to ensure that they bring that to the table and make sure it's professional. And make sure, if you walk in that room and you confidently tell those people, this is what we need to do, that you do that and you deliver it on time, on brand, on spec. And that's been one of the main things that I've probably focused on, and one of the things that has allowed me to go from an independent contractor editing this to someone who can manage a budget, 7 figures. So, yeah.
Let me ask this: Is something you touched on that's been an area of interest to a lot of young black men, and you come from a unique position of being an independent contractor that gets to walk among the corporate landscape where you're in it, but at the same time you can still separate yourself from it. But for those who are stuck in that corporate landscape, you touched on hair. I want to talk about hair in particular for a second.
Yeah.
How important is it for a young black man today to have a haircut as opposed to growing out his natural hair? And I know a lot of times women talk on it, but it's not really mentioned on how sometimes you don't want to, waves may not be your thing. Maybe you got a big head and you need a little bit of extra hair to even you out. But how do you navigate that?
You mean, is it accepted and depending on what industry you're in?
Yeah, and accepted overall, but should it be something you worry about, yes or no?
That's a very good question. I would like to say no. But, again, you have a lot of, I want to watch my words. You have a lot of older people that are in positions of power and influence that have not yet adapted or accepted certain cultures. They have high value customers that they service. Mm-hmm. Those high value customers in most instances don't look like you or me. So they want those customers or clients to be able to relate to whoever it is that they have hired or have in position. So they want you to be clean. They want you to be clean cut. They want you to be presentable. And that's just the way the game is in most instances. Mm. Unless you're dealing with younger leadership or people that are more open to cultures or have been exposed to them via social media. But most people grew up in a bubble. You know what I'm saying? And they from the 60s, 50s. And they don't care, when they look at your hair or whatever the case is. I don't have any, of course. But when they look at your hair, they think, 6 o'clock news. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They think people that look like you, that's what they do, mm-hmm. or whatever the case is. So they immediately associate that with that. But we gotta understand, this isn't anything new. I think the Romans, don't quote me, but I think the Romans back in the day set up a class system. And that class system dictated that, the only way you would be accepted as being someone that was intelligent, or someone that could be accepted into their culture, is if you mimicked their culture. Meaning if you spoke like them, dressed like them, talked like them.
Yeah, that's kind of goes to the saying of "do as the Romans do," in some ways. So to pretty much your point is be aware.
Yeah.
You have to be very aware. Even in this day and age, you have to still be aware of who you are.
Yeah.
In order for you to give off the energy or the look for the outside world to see, you have to understand who you are as a person, your image,
yeah.
And all those different characteristics. So when you go out to the world, you know how to market yourself. You know how to pitch yourself. You know how to put yourself in a room no matter who's around you. So even if we're talking about someone who is more straight-laced, clean look, you know how to be able to kind of have that engagement with them, because you have to be able to understand, be who you are, but just don't be surprised if when you go out into the world that certain circles may react a certain way. I think the true mastery comes where when you're comfortable in your skin, but you also know how to be able to navigate the waters in different circles. Yeah. So I agree with you on that. It's just about being aware in today's time for sure.
But I remember some years ago, again when I was much younger, this white guy walked up to me, and again you gotta understand, when I was coming up, it was just a little different. But this white guy walked up to me and he said, "BJ, you don't have to talk like us. You don't have to act like it." Now he was a cool white dude.
Yeah.
And at the time he was my age. And so I thought about it and I was like, yeah, I guess he's right. So anyway, fast forward, I've learned to kind of understand what situations I have to adapt in, but to also understand that we can't be walking around trying to be, pristine and polished or whatever the case is. Like, we have to be who we are, and we have to, and I just think it's important just for us to accept and acknowledge that, it's okay for us to be our authentic selves existing in these corporate environments.
I totally agree.
I want to rewind for a second because it's something you touched on in your journey. You said prior to your mentor, you had a hard time getting into the content development. I'm gonna use the correct words.
Yeah.
Content development here in Atlanta. When how did you get started in content development?
Absolutely.
And then walk me through how you got to meeting that mentor.
Absolutely. So I'll start from the beginning real quick. I'll just keep it short. I moved to Atlanta, and I started, of course, my education in the Art Institute of Atlanta in this new program called media production. And of course, that's how long ago it was, right? This new program called media production. And over the course of that time, I was struggling with trying to keep my life together in general, right? And I'm just kind of setting up like who I was as a person into transitioning into all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And so, between 17 and 19, like I was, I had been to jail a few times or whatever the case is. Of course, like everybody else, we have good family members, and then we have family members who do other stuff, and that was my circle, or whatever the case is. But eventually, I got past that mentality, and I began to realize, in order for me to move forward in life, there were a lot of people that I had to cut off, and a lot of bad habits and things that I had to cut off. And again, not having anyone to walk me through all this stuff, it was just stuff that I had to figure out like on my own or whatever the case is. So anyway, so I landed, I started working on music videos. I think back then we were shooting like Hot Boy videos and Outkast videos and all that stuff. And then I started working on commercials for Coca-Cola. And then I landed a job with Fox News at the time. And from there I began to learn what the corporate culture was. I began to clean myself up a little bit. And I went from Fox to CNN. And I went from CNN to Coca-Cola. And at that point, I got laid off or whatever the case is. But to speak on, and that's when I kind of pursued my independent venture. But I got into those spaces, honestly, not necessarily because I beat out 20 million applicants. There is a such thing as white privilege, but there's also a such thing as black privilege. And there's also a such thing as leveraging your network or whatever. Mm-hmm. So, my first gig at Fox, of course, I was prepared. I had my resume and I had been sending it out and everything, but I reached out to an associate, somebody who I went to school with, and they were like, hey man, come down to Fox, man. I want to introduce you to, the lead, whatever the department was, the lead production department or something. Walked in, it was a black guy. He turned around, he took one look at me. I put on my best jacket and everything. He turned around and took one look at me. He said, come back Monday and you can start. And, I took as best advantage of that opportunity as I could. I took that opportunity, added it to my resume, sent my resume to CNN. CNN said, oh, you work with Fox, you've been working on these music videos, we think you're a good candidate. I took my resume from CNN, I took my resume, added CNN to it, added Fox to it, sent it to Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola said, oh, you've been doing work, you've worked with a few Fortune 500s. And so I leveraged, so for me it was just about getting in, learning the environment, learning the culture, and then just saying, hey, this is me, this is what I do, and this is the value that I bring. And that's kind of what led me to different opportunities.
It sounds like, it don't sound like that's what he did. He flipped the resume. He pretty much took the valuation you took the valuation of your resume and you put it to work for you to get other opportunities, bigger opportunities, And it's like with each pace of the way, that's how you really was able to, you know what I'm saying, get your foot in the door, but not just get in the door, get the lay of the land.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying, get your piece of the pie, and be able to move on to the next assignment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, let me ask you, like, where does that work ethic come from? You know,
oh, that's a very good question.
yeah, like that work ethic, like that doesn't come from like, let me just kind of like coast and just enjoy me having an opportunity. That comes from like, nah, I have an assignment. I know where I'm trying to go. Where's that root come from?
I don't like to cosign stereotypes about my people or anything, but some of the stereotypes that people attribute to us have some truth to them. A lot of people look at rappers that stay in the studio for 12 hours and then stay on the road, you know, all month. They look at them and they say, oh man, they hustling. You gotta understand, most of these rappers come from nothing. Like, they come from poverty, they come from having to sell drugs, and they do not want to go back to it. So I don't understand how other people think, but I don't want to go back to knowing my car doesn't work and I can't get it fixed. I don't want to go back to being laid off from Coca-Cola and losing my apartment and having to move in with my aunt. And so, you know, when that happened to me, when I got laid off from Coca-Cola, it taught me, it said, okay, I can't depend on a 9 to 5. And even if I do acquire a 9 to 5, nothing against a 9 to 5, right? Mm-hmm. I have to be committed to that situation, and I have to deliver. So my motivation to be as thorough as possible, my motivation to choose to adapt, and to choose to be the best version of myself in these environments has always been because I don't want to lose that opportunity, and I know it's fruitful, and I know it can go away. And you know, I have bills to pay, I have kids, and that's what pushes me every day. But a lot of us just don't. I don't know if it's sharing that. I don't know if it's because of how we were raised. I have no idea. I don't know if it's because of the environment that we come from. But I have a story about that. Like, a lot of my subcontractors come from the TV production environment. A lot of my people right now are in the bubble with Tyler Perry. Mm-hmm. One of my guys who's a gaffer once told me, he said, hey man, Tyler Perry, man, he be cursing us out all the time. I said, what? He said, yeah, man. He said he made us move a whole, I forgot what it was, I can't even think of the terminology, whatever it was. He made us break it down and move it from one side to the other side, and it took us a whole day, and then he cursed us out again. I said, man, Tyler Perry must be a asshole. Oh, I'm sorry.
You fine?
Okay.
Yeah, no, you're good.
He said, oh man, I said, Tyler Perry must be an asshole. And I thought about that for a long time. I said, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be like Tyler Perry. I mean, I want to be like Tyler Perry, but I don't want to be an asshole. So then, you know, I contracted him for a few more gigs with some high value clients. And I noticed him. I was like, he was a little lazy in some of the execution that we were doing. Like, we're trying to switch setups and he moving a little slow. Then he got an attitude in front of one of the clients one time and didn't check himself, didn't apologize. And, you know, he just didn't deliver consistently the way I'm accustomed to delivering and the way I'm expecting for him to deliver. And then I got it from another one of my associates. And these guys all look like me. Mm. And I'm attempting to bring them into this corporate environment, trying to leverage what I've built, these relationships I've built, to bring more people in that look like me. And they're not giving it their all. And so, in that moment, I said, I see why Tyler Perry be cursing y'all out. Like, I see why. So, when you hear these stories about Oprah or whoever, again, I'm not these people, I'm nowhere near these people, but the point is, when you hear these stories about all these people being tyrants, it probably don't come from those people just having a mental problem. It probably comes from some of the people that they work with. Like Tom Cruise just cursed out, you know, his film set because he didn't want to go into like the quote unquote COVID remission where they had to shut down production. Some people listening to that might say, "Hey man, like what happened to him? I thought he was cool." No, everybody around him is fucking up. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so overall, the point I'm making is, people just don't get that problem with me. Like, you're not gonna have that problem with me. Like, I'm not going. Like, I'm going to be thorough. I'm going to check off all my boxes the night before. I'm gonna stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning to learn whatever process it is I need to learn whatever piece of equipment it is I need to learn, so that when I step on set, I'm ready to go. I'm the most prepared person on set. If you don't know what's gonna happen next, I do. I know what's gonna happen next. What we gonna do? How we gonna figure this out? I got it. I got a pivot and everything. I already thought about all this stuff. And so I think that's what these people that continue to contract me and continue to hire us, I think that's what they see in me, and ultimately it funnels down to the people that I subcontract. But you cannot come into my space, especially looking like this, not delivering.
Yeah.
It's the idea that the people below you should never be hustling less than you. And I don't mean below as in like social level. It's the people that you bring in, that you're basically exposing them to your network.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I'm bringing you into this situation that could potentially be good for you, for the simple fact of, hey, you're coming in and you're a sound, engineer. I may not need you again, but this company may.
Absolutely.
And I shouldn't be working hard enough to cover up your mistakes.
Yes.
And to cover, to keep my face card clean.
Yes.
You should come in and hustle harder than me.
Yes.
Because you should, and I think what it is, a lot of people who are hustlers, they're always thinking, oh, the person that I bring in is going to work as hard as me.
Yep.
And it's a gift and a curse at the same time.
Yep.
Because you want it more than they want it.
Yep.
And you want it for them more than they want it for them.
Yep.
When you first started Be Creative, well, I want to hear the story about how you started, because I feel like that's a amazing journey. But when you first started, how were you picking who had the hustle and who didn't?
It goes back to the conversation y'all had with a young lady. It's hard to find good people, man. Like, I mean, it's far and few. You know what I'm saying? That's why there's not too many of you. You know what I'm saying? Like, leading this initiative, leading this push to create content and command these spaces. And that's why in the corporate space, there's not that many of me as far as people who lead these productions or whatever the case is. Oh crap, I got sidetracked. I'm sorry, hold on. Well, say the last part. My bad. Say the last part again, because I started talking about something people? Totally. How did I choose? Oh, I'm sorry. I totally got you. I apologize. So I get to that. So in starting the company, I guess you have to understand, like, I came from, again, the old school where there weren't too many of me in this city. Why? Because there wasn't a demand for quote unquote content development. You know what I'm saying? Like, everything was more so about articles. Everything was more so about commercial productions and commercials, high-end commercials. How else were you going to reach your clients? You didn't necessarily need to tap into social media. You didn't necessarily, like, everything was either a commercial or you were having a meeting speaking directly to people or whatever the case is. And so when I initially started Be Creative Media, I was coming out of a phase in which I was shooting music videos and I was shooting Big Facts before Big Facts was Big Facts. Like, I was partnering with DJ Scream to shoot, these little sit down interviews we would do with artists or whatever the case is. I would go out and shoot music videos when live mixtapes was popping and all that type of stuff. And
the good days.
The good days. And I would go in clubs and I would document the younger Gucci's and the younger T.I.'s and package that content and sell it in local retail stores as DVDs, and some of the content will go to World Star and blah, 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 blah. But then YouTube took over completely. World Star completely took over. And some of my business models that I was accustomed to coming from the old school totally died out. I couldn't sell my DVDs. I couldn't make that money anymore. And rappers don't pay well, unless you're locked into them with a label or through a label. And so I had to okay, so what am I going to do? And so I just, I said, well, let me clean myself up. I came up with a name that was better than, Rap Hustling or whatever the case is. And invested whatever money I had into a camera and some editing equipment, created some flyers, and went out and said, hey, I do commercials. I do weddings. I do events, or whatever the case is. And it was all about me. I was the face of the business, and whatever I delivered, that's what would ultimately build my brand. And so I was just thorough. I remember doing work with people, and they would be questionable initially, and then I would start working with them, and they would be like, hey man, you're really professional. And it used to startle me a little bit. I used to be like, what the hell is professional? I'm just being me. I'm just doing me. But they would tell me I'm really professional. And so anyway, I stuck with that. And I would just take, that little $500 commercial I did for this business, and I would take that little bio video I did for this client, and I created a website, put that content on the website. Same hustle everybody's doing. I took that content on the website, and I would say, this is what I do. You would come to me, and I would say, okay, you have to do this particular project. Well, this is what I charge, but I'm going to need some assistance. I'm going to need some help, and this is how much it's going to cost. And that would be a step up in my production value. So I would then take that, and I'd probably just take that video alone, send it out to an agency or a client and say, hey, look what I just did. I just did this, and it was this budget, but of course I wouldn't tell them, I wouldn't tell them it was $2,500. You know what I'm saying? So they will look at it and they will say, okay, well, how much you charge? And I would upcharge again so that I could acquire more people and that I could invest more in that particular project. And so, long story short, it was just a show and prove process for me. Show and prove, present yourself, market yourself, flip it, go bigger, reinvest, and repeat the process. As far as how I would identify a key talent that I would associate myself with, again, I think that's 7 degrees of separation. And I think twofold. I would reach out to my circle to figure out, who was, the best in this particular area, this particular field, and get references, of course, like most people. And then, like we tapped into earlier, I would lock in the platforms like Indeed, as well as LinkedIn, to try to find the quote unquote what I consider to be the professionals. But it's always difficult trying to find, people who can really deliver on what they say. And that's why when companies hire you, or when people lock you into a contract, that's why they stick with you. They stick with you because it ain't that many good people out there.
They don't want to go through finding somebody.
They don't want to go through, it's difficult. Companies have turnover rates, and the person next to you ain't covering their weight. You got to do extra. You got to stay longer because they want to leave and they want to take a holiday break. I don't know where these people come from. I have no idea. But it's not me, and it was never me. And I'm assuming that's why, again, amongst these polished white professionals that I typically work with, I think that's why they respect me and they value me, because I bring that to the table, and I try to hold everybody that's with me accountable to bring that same effort to the table as well.
Yeah, so it boils, and I think this is where when you talk about crossing over, removing that color barrier. Yeah. This is something that no matter what culture, what background you come from, there's certain things that will always be valuable in almost every community, almost every industry. Yeah. And I think that's work ethic as well as ownership of your role, ownership of what you bring to the table. And I think that's what but that's what definitely know from my experience having Jared say that too. Us having those conversations, and even now, us having this conversation with you about the significance of ownership and accountability. Um, I wanna kind of ask you about the thing about rebranding because you hit it on the net, like in the midst of you just telling your story. You talked about, you mentioned pivoting,
Yeah.
you mentioned rebranding, and I like your story about rebranding because it wasn't so much of like trying to become a whole new character or a whole new person. You, if anything, it sounds like you did more of like just more of a polishing. It's kind of like polishing the car. Like cars, your car is gonna look the way it looks no matter what. But you take it through a car wash, get a full detail. It's something about when that finished product that makes it look. It makes you as the owner or the driver adore it more.
Yeah.
You're gonna drive it different. You're gonna be more cautious when you out here on the highway speeding.
Yeah.
I think for you, that's that transformation, that rebranding process that you took.
Yeah.
What do you think about what you see in the workforce now? Do you see more people going about that process, or do you see people kind of like being more casual with the hey, we'll figure it out as we go? How do you feel about that?
Yep. We'll figure it out as we go. I think with it, of course, as social media and everything continues to just completely take over, it already has, and it ain't even no point in even referring to it that way. Everything is becoming more targeted. Businesses are becoming more targeted with who they target their services to, as far as what services they choose to deliver to specific demographics or whatever the case is. And so I think in business over the course of the last few years, I think we are having to do that as well. It can no longer be, I hate when I go on to LinkedIn and I see somebody that says, I just do, I don't know, I just do videos or something. I want to know like what niche of video you do. I want to know what space you primarily function in, like what clients you typically work with or whatever the case is. I think, 2020 has empowered, inspired, and motivated a large percentage of citizens, to figure out what it is that they're strong at, and to not. Oh, you got something? I guess so. To end, my bad. I think 2020, has taught everybody the value of family, health, the value of having, not depending on one source of income, and it's taught a lot of people, in general, how to pivot, and that they may have to figure out other ways, to bring in income or whatever the case is. And I don't know, that I guess that's what I respect about the events that transpired in 2020. I think it brought it hurt a lot of people, but I think it brought the best out of a lot of people. And again, even with with my company, we decided to move more from just being focused on more service, to move from just being focused on providing services to saying, hey man, let's really start pushing this original content development. And like what you were speaking with the young lady about, developing content and putting it on YouTube and different platforms and monetizing this and monetizing that. I think that's a major part of being successful is, figuring out what you're good at, and then figuring out your lane, mastering that lane, and then from that point figuring out how can I build, expand, and grow from this point? And what other key things about my skill set can I now monetize or sell, or push into the market? So I'm kind of getting off a subject or whatever the case is, but
I think you actually are. I think this is where the conversation about rebranding, I think it goes into fine detail, because rebranding and pivoting, like you mentioned, 2020, you believe it taught a lot of people significant lessons.
yeah.
I think as we are here in 2021, going into further along in the future, it's going to get more competitive, and not more competitive amongst like you versus other people. I think it's always been like that in the society that we live in. But I also believe that you're going to have to become more competitive than who you were the day before.
So fighting against, the battle is with yourself. We think we competing against everybody else, but as long as we wake up every day becoming a better version of ourselves and realizing that we have a lot more to learn, a lot more investing we could do, a lot more networking we could do. As long as we keep doing that, who can beat you? Once you're fully committed, like Will Smith said, all you got to do is commit.
Mm-hmm.
And once we're fully committed, the universe just gets out of our way. Like, what can stop you? It's like being in the zone or whatever the case is. And I think people, a lot of people just can't function on that level. And that's why, we kind of separate ourselves from everybody else. Everybody just can't function on that level. Everybody can't commit, and it's not just about committing, it's about maintaining a certain level of commitment on a consistent basis and delivering over and over every time, the same way that you delivered before, if not better.
Yeah, and it's weird that you mentioned that, because I feel like it's a certain energy that people who have that put off, and it's like, no matter where you go, people sense it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if you're the new hire janitor or if you're the CEO. If you give off that, I don't know how to put it. A lot of times people call it
You talking about aura?
It's an aura.
The it factor.
The it factor.
Yeah.
Some people just, most people simplify it to just confidence, but it's like a level of
comfort.
Ooh, I want to know him,
Yeah.
or I want to know her, or it's something about them that I know is gonna be great. Charisma.
All that.
It's all of that bottled into one, and it's weird because I know in my past I've seen it happen to me, where I walk into a room and people say, I don't know what it is, but I know you're gonna be fine no matter what. Yep. And that was always something that would upset me at a job interview. Like, if you could have had a job interview, you like, oh, I got this job. Yep. But then you call, they get the call back. And you get the call back, and they're like, we had to go in a different direction. We look for somebody who fits our system a little bit more. Yeah. It took me a long time to realize that's exactly what it was. Is when people see that glow. Let's just call it a glow. When they see that glow in you, it's a lot of times people in a position of power will see it and go, ooh, nah, that's they gonna turn everything upside down over here. I don't need that.
Somebody they can program, or it's somebody that can fall in line.
Too much influence to spread amongst the masses.
Yeah, and I feel like, and just talking to you, I feel it. I can see when you were at Coca-Cola and people were like, what is he doing? Because I know you talked about growing your hair out a little bit, and they were like, no, hold on. I can't get mad because he's still doing his job, but it's something about him that's just.
It goes against goes more against the system of the system that they have established at their company. And there's something about, and like, even with talking with you, I know some people that may be watching, maybe listening to us right now, they may be like, man, it's more of a chill kind of conversation, but it's definitely impact with high energy because of the fact that with confidence that comes, one thing about being highly confident, you're able to instill comfort in those around you, especially in the working environment. And I think for those people who don't have a good grip on that concept, they become insecure, or they become intimidated. They look at you like competition versus looking at you as a collaboration.
You irritating their spirit.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So I think that's with you. I definitely get to Jared's point. I think that's what the energy that we are experiencing right now in this conversation. I know people viewing, people listening right now, you probably getting the same reaction. And if you're not, just go check out the web page. Just go check out his company page and look him up, because this guy is a great example of what it means to see one of your own from your own communities to go through, gain the 10,000 hour mark of paying your dues, as well as still learning, still being able to relate to those from the younger generation, as well as the people of the older generation, to kind of help understand, like, hey, you can be yourself, but you gotta come correct. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I like where we're sitting right now when we're talking about the glow, because I want to know that mentor you had.
Yep.
You said he was 65,
yep.
And I'm gonna be honest. People go through seasons in life. I don't know if you guys have read Ray Dalio's Principles. I haven't read it, but I have skimmed it.
Gotcha.
But I listened to an interview that he was talking about, and he mentioned that there's a season in life where when you've already passed your prime, and it's like, okay, I've harvested what I'm gonna harvest. It's time for me to go plant some more seeds.
Exactly.
It seemed like you so happened to catch him at that right moment where he was planting his seeds, and you spoke on one of the things he taught you. But we do want to dive into. We talked about this earlier in the podcast. We talked about mentoring. I know we didn't cover it when we reached out, but I want to know how important just having that right mentor was. Not just to you starting your own company, but just you developing into who you are now.
Man, sadly, that relationship with him was a little short-lived, but I did have other people that I did reach out to, and I can kind of speak on them per se. The background he came from, again, sadly, it wasn't too many people that just came from my background that could really help me. And, I swear, man, I could probably be a lot further than I am today had I had access to somebody who had been through everything that I was going through in the field that I was in, or whatever the case is. And that's why hopefully, real soon, hopefully later this year, I want to partner with a lot of my people that function in the VR space, the AR space, the unscripted, scripted content space, the corporate space, the film, TV. I have people that work in all these spaces and command all these spaces. Hopefully I can partner with these people and create, an immersive learning experience for like entry level people kind of coming up in the game, whether it be people in high school, college, or just getting out of college, or whatever the case is. Because I feel as though it's important. Had I had that coming up, I'm more than positive. I'd probably be on the like 20 minute. I mean, it's no telling, what I'd be into at this particular time. That mentor specifically kind of gave me guidance from the perspective of someone who ran a business. So everything y'all was just talking about, like process, procedures. And but he just couldn't speak enough to, certain nuances about what I was dealing with. However, I have been able to reach out to, again, it's just not too many people, but I have been able to reach out to, because everybody who's in my space is either me, under me, or, the people who are really up here, or whatever the case is. And so it's like, it's like after somebody who kind of works on projects that I work on, once you, move on to working on other projects, you're pretty much working on like really huge ass projects or whatever the case is. So
in between.
Yeah, it ain't, you know what I'm saying? It's not too much of an in between or whatever the case is. And so, and let's get to that point real soon. But but yeah, so I was able to reach out to some people who had worked on like documentary projects that I participated in, and these people were heads of their production companies. or whatever the case is, and I've been able to sit down with these people, and they've been able to give me, a little game. But it's the same thing that we already know. I mean, it's the same thing they're gonna tell you. You know what I'm saying? From a film video perspective is, lock in with a solid team. Make sure you have access to funding and financing, or whatever the case is, and make sure you attach yourselves to, bigger production companies and people who have leverage and people who have access to networks and online streaming services, and just go out and create. I think the main thing that everybody is going to tell you, me, anybody is that, with the power of social media, the only option we have outside of providing a service is creating. That's it, like create. Of course, we have our investments and we have our other hustles, but if we're going to approach this platform and we're going to commandeer it in any way, our only option is to create. Our only option is to create, be consistent, and build some type of brand, some type of following, and then figure out how to monetize it, and figure out how to either monetize it from a streaming perspective, from a brand partnership perspective, from a sponsorship perspective, funneling clients, through to your website to buy product, whatever it is. We know what the game is, and the only thing we have to do is execute. And we have no excuse. Why? Because everything is right here. We can record right here, upload right here. We can set up our marketing budgets right here. We can target whatever demographic we want to right here. We can collect payments right here. We can do our side hustles right here. We can invest in Bitcoin right here. So none of us, anybody coming into the game, like, we don't have any excuse. We know exactly what we need to do. And that's the only thing Gary Vee is going to tell you, me, or anybody. They're just going to tell you, you have the power. You have the power. Like, and this is it. I mean,
Is that so? Like, and I think with what you just mentioned, it speaks towards like the power of intellectual property.
Yep.
I think right now conversations are taking place in the Wall Street stock cryptocurrency space. Conversations, are definitely continuing to brew in the real estate space. More tangible things that you can feel, things that you can see with the naked eye.
Yeah.
But one thing that I'm starting to see not really happen as much as I would like to, see more of, especially within more of our immediate inner circles, is the conversation about what goes beyond the brand that you see on a shirt, or the brand that goes beyond what you see on a tag or whatever. That's that IP, the intellectual property. What's your thoughts about that, like the significance of intellectual property in business nowadays, and especially in the media space? Like, what's your thoughts about it?
I think long game, having intellectual property and implementing the proper procedures to secure that intellectual property from a legal standpoint is the only way we're going to win in the long game. The short game is the service side of what we do, which is, hey, I can come consult you, I can come film you, I can document you. You want me to put together your reality show? I'll put together your reality show, but that's not your IP, or whatever the case is. So I think that's the only move that we can make if we want to collect the check while we sleep. And ultimately, that's where everybody either should be at or should be trying to get at when it comes to the media space. Of course, everybody has investments. Everybody's dabbling in real estate. But if you're going to pick up a camera, or if you're going to, create a podcast or whatever the case is, your end game, has to be centered towards securing that intellectual property from a legal standpoint, and then monetizing it, whether it be, making sure the brand is trademarked, or the logo is trademarked, whatever the case is, and moving on from that point to take all the necessary steps to ensure that you're figuring out how to continually monetize that brand on whatever platform it may be and whatever partnerships you decide to create.
For sure, man.
Yeah. And the last one I'm gonna ask, when it comes to brand and creating content, where would you say somebody should start? If fresh dude, let's bridge the gap, generation gap. If I'm a 23-year-old, that's around the time you graduate college. 23-year-old, I'm just graduating college. I'm trying to figure out what's my next steps. They know they don't want to go work for a corporate company, but they say, hey, I want to just start creating now.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them so they can get started like today?
I mean, it's twofold. And I mean, we know the answer, and I'll say it. Man, I guess it depends on what your end game is. The thing about it is, if you jump out the gate creating, some people are talented enough to where they hit the mark as soon as they come out of the gate. And some people kind of have to build that understanding of how to create, what to create, what's popular, what's cool, how do I figure out how to reach an audience. So anyway, it's just a process coming out of the gate. So you can tell anybody, hey man, just, if you're coming out of college and you want to create, just find your niche, whatever your niche is, whatever you're good at, or whatever you're most familiar with. Your uncle may do real estate, or your cousin may be a rapper. Attach yourself to something that's already moving, or whatever the case is. So your cousin's a rapper, he do his videos, start working on his bio stuff, his social media videos, his interviews, and you leverage that to then brand yourself as someone who does just that, and you flip that into a bigger opportunity. You see little Baby in the street. Baby, I do music. Of course, Baby ain't going for that shit, but I'm just saying. The goal is, to then take whatever it is that you leverage from this relationship that you have to then build a new or create a new opportunity. Mm-hmm. So, it's 7 degrees of separation. Like, who are you connected to? What are you really into? And, what niche within media production do you want to approach? Do you like gamers? So gaming is new. So do you want to produce a podcast around gaming? Like, do you love that? So if you love it and you've been doing it technically since you was probably 18, but you just ain't really put no business structure behind it, just do that. Like, just, pursue that. And then it, again, momentum, like, dedication, figuring out your craft, learning what mistakes you made, applying what you learned to your new processes, having, cool equipment, but then investing in getting more equipment. It's all a process. And we all know what the process is. It's just a lot of people don't have the grit that it takes to go through that entire process of starting from the bottom and building a brand until your brand is solidified and clients are calling you and you good. Like, I don't have to worry about, like, I got clients that are locked in with me or whatever the case is, and they, as long as I deliver, they're gonna be locked in with me. But it comes again from just ensuring that you deliver and not being afraid to adapt in certain situations, and not being afraid to sacrifice a little bit, and just making sure you go hard. But if I could suggest anything, again, it just comes back to honestly just finding what your niche is, finding what you love, and creating, building on top of that. But the other thing is, in locking in with a production company, right? Let's say you want a PA for a few years, or you want to learn how to do movies. You can start out fresh out of college just doing whatever you want to do on your own. But you're going to be hitting up YouTube University, and you're going to be figuring this out on your own. And it's going to take time to do that. So you got a choice. You can either take time to figure that shit out on your own, or you can lock in for a few years, you know, with a company, and then you can study whatever their process is. A lot of people look at 9 to 5s like, I ain't getting no 9 to 5. I'm gonna start my own business straight out of college. And then, you know, they run into a brick wall because they ain't got the grit and they don't know what they're doing. And they're not taking the time out to figure it out. So, you know, like me, you know, I took time out in the corporate space to learn a lot of stuff and to learn what procedures were, what the culture was, what the dress code was, what the lingo was. And then I took that, you know, went to the streets, you know, learned how to create product, create partnerships with retailers, sell that product, distribute it. And then so it's a lot that I learned before I stepped out and claimed that I was, you know, quote unquote, you know, a company or whatever the case is. So, I mean, it's twofold. You can go two ways. You can go the corporate route and learn as much as you can, or you can go the film production route and learn as much as you can, or you can jump out here and learn everything you need to learn on your own.
Bump your head.
Yeah, bump your head. Yeah, ain't nothing wrong with that. It's a choice.
I would say honestly, no matter what route you take, you're gonna bump your head.
You're gonna bump your head. Yeah.
You know, no matter what. So you just gotta figure out which way you're gonna bump your head and.
Bump your head with a check or bump your head with empty pockets.
Bump your head with empty. But a job should always be, and I think we talked about this earlier too.
Yeah.
A job, and you already know where I'm going. A job should never be looked at as a job. A job, I always looked at my job when I was at Coca-Cola CNN, like this is my seed money. Like these are my sponsors. Like I don't want to say this, but I want to say I did care, right? But when I went, like sometimes I would literally wake up knowing that I had something else to do on my side hustle, knowing I had to go interview this artist or shoot this video at 2:00, but of course I had to be there from 9 to 5. So I would wake up with a plan, like, dang, I gotta leave at 1:30. I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna knock out all the work I gotta do, and then I'm gonna tell them I'm gonna take a long lunch break, and I ain't coming back till 5. Or whatever, you know what I'm saying? So I never.
I understand, cause I've done it myself, and it's like you gotta make a way, and I think that the workspace is like, in contrary to belief, corporations or big time companies, they actually advocate for that. From my experience, they actually advocate for that. As long as you're getting your work done, as long as you are you're being a team player, you're still keeping that morale of the company to a high regard. I feel like if BJ says, "Hey, I gotta shoot at 2:00 in the city, and I'm not coming back until 5," or "Hey, I'm gonna be virtual for the rest of the day," hey, there's no reason why the company's gonna say, "No, you need to be here." It's like, nah, hey, do your thing, but that work. Hey, I need that report on Monday, or hey, I need the production credits for this and that by this date. Yeah. Oh, it's already turned in. Have a good day.
Yeah. See, that's how we would run that business, but these, you know.
Yeah, I understand.
You know, these older people, and not just white people, older black people, older Asian people, whatever.
Yeah.
That's the culture that they come from, or whatever the case is. And so, you know, but you're right. In most companies, especially now, it's about work-life balance.
Yeah.
So they don't want, you know, disgruntled employees. They don't want people who don't feel like being there. So they definitely give you more freedoms or whatever. But the overall point is, of course, that we already know is, you know, your job is your executive producer. You know, and 7, it might be 9 to 5, but 7 to 10, 7 to 11, you know, that's when you clock in, you know, at the other job, if you're going to use your job as leverage to create or generate any new opportunity.
Yeah. And one way I started looking at it, and this isn't something I did for a long time, it was a recent switch within like the last 4 years. I started looking at my job as school. Yeah. This is school I'm getting paid to go to. Because if you look at colleges, well, I'm paying to go here to learn. Well, if you're getting your first couple of jobs and you know you're starting at an entry-level position, all they're doing is teaching you to see if you're good enough to go into management. Why not just look at it the same way? This is my crash course in management. This is my crash course in whatever field. So, and it started to switch as I moved through different careers. Because I originally started out after college in logistics. And I was like, well, there ain't nothing I'm gonna learn here, but I come back and it make full circle because now I know how to train somebody efficiently because that's what they teach you in logistics. They teach you how to train. You teach somebody how to do their job and to do it safely and not get hurt. And then when you go into sales, you're taught how to sell not just yourself, how to sell a product, how to sell yourself, how to market that product.
Skills. Those are the most important skills across any industry.
And now I look back and I look at it like, oh, those are classes. I put in, because if you look at it, and I do this with time, but if you look at it, if you go to these jobs for 8 hours a day, let's just round and say 10 hours a day, it takes 1,000 days to get your 10,000 hours of experience. Yes. So if you actually going and you doing it and you doing what you're supposed to be doing, you going, you trying to learn something, you using your manager as you're supposed to. That's your mentor. That's what they're there for. You go in, you learn from them. Now you get your 10,000 hours for free. Because essentially they paying you to be there, and they paying back them student loans that you pay to get the job.
So it's
perspective.
So definitely about perspective. And you said it great. You hit on something, Jerry. I think that that may raise up a great, not so much an argument with no purpose, but an argument to help reshape the perspective of today's professionals. Because, and where I'm going with this comes from conversations that have happened in the past where people are talking about be your own boss, becoming self-made. You don't need to report to nobody. But when you put it in that format of, hey, this 9 to 5 is a great opportunity for you to go into a development program called a job.
Development
program. From the average from 8 to 10 hours, you are working and reporting to your mentor, not your boss, but you're reporting to your mentor. And guess what? They're paying you to fine tune their systems on how they work.
Perspective.
So they want you to get better. And they want if you're in the right place. They want you to get better because one, and it sounds bad, they want you to get better, one, for your personal development, if they care about you. But for their bottom line. If I got this guy who don't know how to do, let's look at production. I got this guy who doesn't know how to produce a video or commercial from end to end. But I bring him in, I train him. It take maybe a year or two. But in a year or two, he can do it, and all I gotta do is give him a 5% raise. Well, I won.
It makes
because
sense.
Now I got a guy who can do end to end production that I probably have to pay another guy $10,000-$20,000 more a year. And all I had to do is pay him like an extra $20 a month.
And guess what? They also willing to set, for depending what job you at, they willing to set you up with benefits, willing to set you up with your own investment vehicles called a 401k. There's power to that. There's power to that. You know what I'm saying?
College, they give you free health insurance. Most people don't know that, but check your college handbooks. They give you health insurance. A job do the same thing.
So I think So the argument I was thinking that I say that we are generating now for the public to participate in is you need to reshape the way you look at opportunity. You need to reshape the way that you look at your 9 to 5. Reshape the way even as you look at entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship means, hey, you feel like you're prepared enough to go out on your own. It doesn't matter if you are fully 100% or not. Get started, but while you're getting started, get mentorship. Now you can get mentorship in the format of you getting paid to work a certain amount of hours and be able to be somewhat of an apprentice, or you can be able to get paid in the format of you putting in extra sweat equity to get your business or get your operation on your own to a point where it's bringing in that income.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? But I greatly appreciate everything. I appreciate this whole conversation because these are the conversations that I definitely want people of all generations to be able to get back to doing. I like that's one of the things I want to be able to continue to call out in this conversation is your upbringing, because you come from there's a balance between older, past, and present, and future as well. And I think for anyone who is around the early 20s or younger than us, or if you're older than us, take this conversation and really apply the thinking, your perspective, and reanalyze it because it can either hurt you or it's going to either help you or it's going to hinder how you move forward and within this year and years to come.
Absolutely.
Well, BJ, I appreciate you coming to hang
Appreciate
out with
y'all.
us and
Appreciate y'all.
really dropping some gems on us, because I'm like, in my head now, I'm like, oh man, this could be something that's amazing, just watching you grow, watching us grow, and then just seeing how we can help each other.
Yeah.
But where can everybody find you? Where can they learn more about you?
Absolutely. LinkedIn. I prefer to be contacted on LinkedIn. And my name on LinkedIn is of course BJ Orr. But the website that people could tap into as well is www.bcreativemedia.com. Social media handle is BJ Orr _BeCreative. And so I prefer to be contacted either on LinkedIn or my personal social media profile. That way I know it's, a personal contact versus business, I guess.
Definitely, yeah.
Well, everybody, thank you for joining. This is Jared.
This is Amari.
And peace.
Peace.
Woo-woo! All right, that was fun.